Good morning, you're with Gowri and Asmod this morning. It's a beautiful Thursday morning, and we have a lot of fresh news for you again. And we'll get on to our discussion. We're starting with a news from Malaysia, where Najib tells UMNO to be brave like the ISIL fighters. Uh, Apparently, he's advising UMNO to emulate the bravery of the ISIS fighters in Iraq.
He says, when someone dares to fight to their death, they can even defeat a much bigger team. So probably he's just trying to encourage UMNO members.
Do you know a lot about UMNO and how UMNO is relevant to Malaysia?
Isn't it a coalition?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and that has been ruling for like maybe decades here.
Yeah, it's actually a Malay majority or a Malay-only party, actually, which is why it's called the United Malay National Organization.
Mm-hmm.
And previously in the past, there have been some conflicts even when this our third prime minister actually suggested to widen the base of UMNO and to include more people. And a lot of people were not happy about that because they thought that it should be exclusively for Malays in this country so they can protect their special status in the country as well.
What Najib, more like Prime Minister Razak, said was, whatever we agree or not is another matter.
Mm-hmm.
The group ISIL, with the strength of just 1,300 people, can defeat an Iraqi army of 30,000 soldiers. So what is basically saying that if they can do that, probably the group of UMNO people who were in attendance, and they were around like 1,000 in number,
Mm-hmm.
they can do much more. And you're just trying to encourage them.
As a Malaysian, I feel like this is a little irrelevant for Najib to say something like that because why would he just ask UMNO to emulate the bravery? If he wants to say something like that, I think he should say it to everyone in the country to emulate the bravery, to stand up for the country if need be. Why would he just focus on UMNO alone?
No, the word that he chooses to say are very interesting to observe. He says he asks people to be loyal to God, the party, and friends.
Okay.
So he places party right at the center of loyalty among party members and the people present there. And his remarks might be controversial because U.S., Iraq, and many international bodies, including UN, and many countries in the West see ISIL as a terrorist group.
Okay.
So if a prime minister of a country asks his party members to emulate people in a terrorist organization, I don't know what implications it will have.
So another issue that I would like to broach here is also about this race-based political parties in Malaysia. I don't know how much you know about this, but currently the government is ruled by BN, which is made up of MCA for the Chinese, MIC for the Indians, and of course UMNO for the Malays. And a lot of people are starting to realize that this is not very effective, and they want to do away with it. They have been voicing out their opinion in various platforms, but instead of actually doing away with it, what we do have instead is a cabinet reshuffle that the prime minister decided to. He hinted it much earlier, but I think it finally got implemented yesterday.
And he invited members from MCA and Gerakan parties, I think. And MCA gets 2 full ministers and 3 deputy ministers, whereas Gerakan has been rewarded with the minister's post.
Mm-hmm. And I think MCA Gerakan President Mas Yu Kyong, who recently won the Teluk Intan by-elections, which was another really big issue in the country as well, has been made a minister in the Prime Minister's department as well. MCA Deputy President Wee Ka Seong has also been appointed. And meanwhile, MCA Vice Presidents like Lee Chi Leong, Chua Ti Yong, and Chu Mei Fan were also appointed as deputy ministers.
Are you aware, like, how big is the cabinet here?
Well, I don't know the exact number of the cabinets.
But in one of the remarks, the Prime Minister said none of the current cabinet members volunteered to leave the cabinet. So all of the incoming ministers and deputy ministers are to the existing cabinet. So the number has been increasing steadily.
Mm-hmm.
For a country like Malaysia with 30 million people, if you just keep on adding like more ministers with more resources and more budget,
Uh-huh.
it might be helpful for the coalition, but it might not be work that well in the long term.
I think that this is another move that probably stemmed from the by-elections as well, where they saw the potential of the Chinese voters, because we know that the BN candidate won, and a lot of people, most people actually had the opinion that it was solely because of the Chinese votes, which is why the Malay candidate, Diana Sofia from the opposition party, did not win. At the same time, I think it's also probably a little bit of a publicity stunt as well, because a lot of people, once again, they have been voicing out their protest against the current government, and they're not satisfied with a lot of things in the country, and they've been even going to the extent where they're asking our prime minister to step down and get someone else to replace him, someone who can probably, in their opinion, do more for the country. But of course, instead, he reshuffles the entire cabinet, and he says it's for a fresh new start, and hopefully this lineup will be able to implement all his new policies and all to help the people.
Hopefully.
Yeah, and I think also another thing that I want to say is this. Najib said actually that these appointments reflect my desire to ensure that the makeup of the cabinet, the government, broadly reflects that of our nation. And the swearing-in ceremony of these new ministers is scheduled to take place this Friday. And I actually have the list of the cabinets here, and I'd like to count for you since you asked me how many of them. But I think that we can do that a bit later.
Yeah. So moving on to government and maybe protests, we have a news from Myanmar, where the Associated Press writes, Myanmar amends controversial public protest law.
So Myanmar's parliament amended a controversial law that requires people to obtain permission for public protest and subject violators to penalties, including prison terms, state media reported on Wednesday.
Under changes to the peaceful assembly law, the maximum penalty for those who cause unrest has been halved to 1 year in prison, while the penalty for those who fail to seek permission for protest was halved to 6 months.
And this amended version still requires people to seek permission for public protest, but it has eliminated a clause from the original law saying that authorities can reject permission, implying that protest will be allowed as long as they are peaceful.
I'm not sure what they mean by, they'll allow protests as long as they are peaceful, and where they draw the lines. So although the authorities now don't have the permission to reject the protest, but still, say if there's a huge protest against the junta, will they still allow it as even if they remain peaceful? That remains to be seen. And because of this, the activists and all other people there are strongly calling to scrap the entire law rather than to amend just parts of it.
Yeah, and also I think recently we attended a little conference on Myanmar a couple of days ago, and they were addressing also about how the military is really powerful there, and that any amendments of the law will require at least 75% of the vote. And I think having heard all that, it's actually a good sign that they have actually managed to make some changes, because from the way those guys are putting it, it seemed like it will take forever for Myanmar to actually implement any changes. They can plan so much, but at the end of it, it has to go through so much procedure and so many people that it seems impossible for Myanmar to get there, especially with their coming elections next year in 2015.
But it might be deceiving here just to call it like a full amendment, because they just have removed a clause that says
No, I'm saying that it's good that they made some minor.
No, it's definitely a step towards reform, and that might be positive for activists and people who really want democratic change. But on the other hand, are they really addressing the major issues in the countries? Or like, there's also this question like, what if the government suddenly opens up? Are people ready to, accept changes? Because democracy also comes with responsibilities. I say this from Nepal because like we suddenly
Mm-hmm.
has a huge change. We suddenly had a huge change and people weren't ready to accept responsibilities, and they just wanted their rights, and it can be chaotic at times.
So I think a couple of them also mentioned about the upcoming 2015 elections that it could uh, a lot of people are hopeful about that elections, and they're hoping for a reform, like you said, and they're hoping for a real change for the country this time. But at the same time, there is a possibility that the election could be rigged and it could be the same thing happening all over again.
And moving on to next news now from Brunei. There's also a cause for stress among primary school teachers who said that they are overworked nowadays as they juggle various responsibilities to meet unreasonable expectations, according to a study presented yesterday afternoon.
And the statistics from the 2013 Brunei key indicator showed that a total of 3,255 teachers are working in 121 public kindergarten and primary schools, whereas 4,136 teachers are spread across 40 government secondary schools and sixth form centers. And Muhammad Zulkarnain Abdul Rahman said that teachers in primary schools need to be multitaskers as they are usually required to teach more than one subject.
The psychology teacher added that in addition to teaching, the teachers also have to take up an administrative role and manage an extracurricular activity. The multiple roles and responsibilities taken up by the new primary school teachers were identified as one of the causes of stress in his research.
That's interesting because that's actually pretty much what's happening in Malaysia as well.
What's the scenario like here?
Well, every teacher is required to teach more than one subject, and in some cases, even a subject that they're not an expert at because they're short-staffed. And I don't think it's because they don't want to hire more people. I think they just think that one teacher should be able to teach a few subjects, and on top of that, they have probably drama workshops to carry out. They don't actually bring in specific people for that. They have to stay back after school for extracurricular activities, and that could go up to like 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And we know that the school here starts at 7:30 in the morning, and that could go up to nearly 12 hours of working. And then when they get home, they have to mark the students' homework. They have the record book to write. So yeah, I can imagine why teaching becomes such a workload and such a stressful profession these days.
May I interject? May I interject here because it's kind of irony. Um, Brunei is considered one of the most prosperous nation in Southeast Asia, and talking about Brunei in terms of the not just the GDP but in terms of the income per capita. So I'm quite surprised that their teachers are stressed out when we always assume that Brunei is this nirvana where everyone just have all the luxury of life and have equal have good income as well as equal access to universal healthcare and education. But at the same time, I'm not really sure how the school system work in Brunei. I mean, in Malaysia itself, even though it is the teachers might be considered overworked, but at the same time, we also need to know that the teachers' working day is actually half a day. So so I guess what I can see the problem here is they are only teaching probably half a day every day instead of making teaching as like their full day job. Instead, another half of their day is occupied with non-teaching work. I think that probably would stress any teachers.
But is this situation any different for, say, teachers in private school and public schools? Because this doesn't mention, right?
I think it does because I mean, I don't know if it's mentioned here. Are you asking in Malaysian context?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I have conducted a couple of dance and acting workshops in international schools, and I guess the teacher do actually stay back to monitor the kids. So I would assume that it's pretty much the same system as in public school. And going back to what Arlene said, uh, in my opinion, I think that even though they're getting a higher pay, that shouldn't. Uh, it probably doesn't mean that that would take away all the stress, because I think that no matter how high your pay is, if the job is stressful, it's still stressful. The amount of money you make doesn't make up for the stress that you get at your workplace.
Mm. Actually, I think what stresses teacher probably is because they're doing a lot of non-teaching work and not because they are teaching too much subjects or too many subjects.
I think it's all the work that comes from the. I think the government has a new system now where you have to, the teachers have to actually key in the marks of every single student individually, and
In Malaysia, you mentioned.
yeah, in Malaysia, and they actually have to do it for every. Before this, I think it was only for the semester exams, the major exams, but now they have to do it for every little monthly test that they have.
And mind you, this piece of news is not about high school, it's about primary school. So it's also a bit of a
But it
irony
works the
that,
same way as well, right?
yeah, I guess
Is
so.
that even realistically possible to do that?
To do what?
To take data from students, after their
That's the
like every
thing. I do
performance.
have a friend who is a teacher who constantly complains about that. And what's even worse is that once she's done everything, every few months they change the system, which means she has to do it all over again from scratch. And she feels like it's such a waste of time. It's such a stressful thing. But
So what you're mentioning is there's no autonomy among teachers, and also I guess school administration to decide what's best for the school. So I think what I can see the similarity between the system in Brunei and also in Malaysia is probably too centralized to the extent that every single changes have to come from on top instead of the school itself making those changes. And I think for teachers, right? I mean for talking about stress, I personally believe that real stress does not come from you doing work that you are passionate about, even though it may take you longer hours. But I think a real stress come from you not being in control of what you're doing. You have to juggle a lot of different things at the same time, but at the same time as well, you have no obligation to decide what is best for the students.
And I think from teaching, we move on to a little news about sex workers in Indonesia, where Indonesia's sex workers resist red light district shutdown. And the mayor of Indonesia's second largest city has officially shut down Doli, one of Southeast Asia's biggest red light districts, but the world's oldest profession is still working despite warnings to stop.
Pimps made no attempt to hide as they stood outside, greeting potential customers. When a sex worker in a karaoke parlor spotted journalists walking past, she ran out with a raised fist and shouted, "Dolly will stay open."
What does that mean?
So Surabaya's reformist mayor, Tri Risma Harini, has vowed to shutter the area, and the government is offering $425 to each of the estimated 1,500 sex workers to help them get out of the business.
Rismarini plans to ease the women out of work and give them until Monday to collect the money. She has not attempted to use force, but said she wants the entire complex closed down by the end of the holy month of Ramadan in late July.
So it seems that this thing is coming up in line with the holy Ramadan, which is about to start really soon. And but what do you think? Is it fair for them to just show up and say, okay, look, guys, we're closing down this place. We're going to give you this much of money, and you just start doing something else with your life?
If they had alternatives, probably they wouldn't have chosen the sex trade in the first place. And the amount they are offering is so meager that I don't know if it would help them in the long term just to set up alternative businesses. So probably another solution would be to provide them training for long term, train them
But
for
I think
months.
we have to ask the core issue. Do you think the job of a sex worker is something that is wrong? I mean, not just against religion, but against do you think human nature or having a civil society itself?
I think it's very hard to state whether it's right or wrong, because of course, I think most people will view it as not a very how do I say it? Not a very high profile job or anything. You know, it's most people's last resort usually when they uh, have no other options, when they're so exhausted from seeking job opportunities. Because I've seen a couple of documentaries. I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but most
But
people.
it could be like the only job that they know how to do
Yeah,
best.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
maybe they are the best at having sex with people.
Okay.
You get paid for that.
I think, as Gowri mentioned out, it's useful to ask, like, are they doing it by their choice or out of necessity? Because, like, say, most of the works that we even take, like, outside, like, I'm not sure, like, how many people actually outside, even in, like, finance or, like, in day-to-day jobs actually enjoy their work. But in terms of sex workers, like, whether we agree or
Well,
not,
it seems
society
like they are
has taboos.
protesting it. So I guess
Yeah.
they probably, this is the job that they feel most. I mean, they can identify themselves with. And also you have to understand the social stigma against sex workers. I think if once they have to leave that job and then return to normal life, so-called normal life, and work in a normal 9 to 5 job or open a business, what about the social stigma of that of their past life? We have to understand that side. And I think another side is also, what if, I mean, like I said just now, like I said earlier, like what if the sex workers themselves want to work as a sex workers rather than working as a carpenter or as a fruit seller or whatever. I mean, even like us, what if you were given money to work in a career that we have no familiarity? What if I have to be an engineer out of a sudden, or a businesswoman out of a sudden?
Or a sex worker.
It's tricky in case of Indonesia because Islam is a Muslim majority country. So people, as you said, like definitely have like more stigma towards sex workers versus like say in a liberal societies like in the West, say Netherlands, people might have different opinions, and the government actually has regulations to protect the rights of sex workers. Versus in Indonesia, I'm not sure if the government has strict regulations to protect their rights.
And I think going back to what you mentioned earlier, Asmod, which I thought was a good point when you said the money that they're offering is very meager, and you cannot just give them money and say, okay, go and do something else. Like, where are they gonna go? What are they gonna do? Where are they even gonna start? So probably the right way to do it is to actually come up with a more systematic program. Like, okay, so once you quit here, you can join this program, and we'll find out what you're good at, maybe what are your talents, and how we can make use of it. What are your other job opportunities? That will probably be more helpful rather than just saying that I'm gonna give you this money, and if you don't stop this business, we're gonna start using violence, and going about that way.
I'd probably expect the government to like come up with alternatives and present it to people, but what they are doing here is like just shutting it down and not giving them any alternatives. So even a next stall might open up in the next state, who knows, after they shut it down, and it might grow even larger and be more illegal. There are a bunch of problems that this policy can bring up with it.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as far as I want to advocate the rights of the sex worker to do whatever they think what's right for themselves, and be protected for doing it. We also should understand that this is a Muslim majority country. Like the government could not openly endorse prostitution. It would be against the principle and the religious belief of the government as well. So in this case, it's quite tricky, but providing a better alternative would be the solution. But I think the long-term solution is to understand what is the work involved within the sex industry, and try to regulate it. I mean, if you don't regulate it properly, providing protection for the sex workers, when it becomes a black market and illegal industry, it will be even more worse. A lot of the sex workers will be abused. They will be forced into the job, without any rights and protection.
So just to give a little additional information on the story, the prostitution rings operate openly in all major Indonesian cities, actually, despite major opposition from the Islamic conservatives, and some of whom who want to replace the country's secular system with one bound by the Islamic law, like you just mentioned, it will be wrong for them themselves to advocate this as much as they want to protect the workers. And also, 246 million people in Indonesia are actually Muslims. So I think that's all the time that we have for our news this morning. Thank you very much for joining us. And as always, like us on our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter. And what else can they do, Arlene?
Oh, they can subscribe to our weekly digest. We will be starting it by this week. It will be. You can send your email to duranasian@gmail.com to state that you are interested to join, or you can send us via our Facebook message as well if you are interested to join us, to subscribe to our weekly digest. And you know what? They can always listen to us if they don't have a computer PC with them. Instead of that, they can go to their mobile and go to the TuneIn app and search for duranasian.com.
And they can listen to us from there as well.
Yeah, live as well. And what else they can do?
I think that's about it. We'll be back in
They also can go to YouTube, and we have a YouTube channel.
Yep, that's right. You can subscribe to us on YouTube and get all our daily updates. We post 2 new videos every day from Monday to Friday. So we'll be back in a bit for our Blast from the Grassroots session.
Stay tuned.